The imperial procession moved south in the spring of 1765. Thousands traveled with it: officials, bannermen, servants, eunuchs, guards, courtwomen, supply caravans stretching across roads that had been prepared weeks in advance. At the center of it all rode the Qianlong Emperor, one of the most powerful men on earth. The Qing dynasty stood at its height. The empire was wealthy. Its borders stretched vast across Asia. Court painters recorded scenes of harmony and control. Poems celebrated imperial greatness. Everywhere the emperor traveled, officials competed to impress him. And beside him traveled the woman recognized as Empress, the Lady Hoifa Nara. She had spent years climbing through the dangerous hierarchy of the Forbidden City, years surviving palace politics that destroyed many others long before they reached the top. Now she occupied the highest female position in the empire. Then something happened. The official records mention an incident during the southern tour. The details remain frustratingly unclear. Historians still debate what truly unfolded inside the imperial entourage. But the consequences arrived immediately. The Empress was abruptly sent back to Beijing. Her imperial privileges disappeared. Court rituals changed around her almost overnight. The emperor never publicly explained the full reason, and within a year, she was dead. Even her funeral carried signs of punishment. This is royal history with Ruth, and this is the story of the Empress removed without explanation. Before she became Empress. Long before the scandal, she entered the Qing court as one woman among many. The Forbidden City looked magnificent from the outside. Golden roofs, vast ceremonial halls, endless ritual, endless order. Inside, life was considerably less peaceful. Every woman within the inner court existed inside a carefully controlled hierarchy. Rank determined everything: clothing, food, housing, ceremonies, access to the emperor, even the number of servants allowed to stand behind you. And competition never truly stopped. A woman could rise through favor. She could also disappear through favor. The future Empress Nara entered this world during the reign of the Qianlong Emperor, who himself had inherited one of the most sophisticated imperial systems in Chinese history. Qing court life revolved around ritual precision. Officials documented almost everything: births, deaths, promotions, ceremonies, sacrifices, audience schedules. The empire loved paperwork, and honestly, imperial bureaucracy had opinions about everything. At first, the future empress was not the most important woman in court. That role belonged to the emperor's first empress. But palace life was unstable. Illness, childbirth, political alliances, and favor could rapidly alter the balance of power. Then the first empress died. The death deeply affected the emperor. Contemporary accounts suggest he mourned intensely. Court ritual demanded visible grief. The emperor withdrew. Ceremonial life shifted around the loss. Eventually, another woman had to assume the role, and the Lady Nara rose. She became empress in 1750. Publicly, the elevation represented stability. The dynasty required an empress. Ritual required an empress. The imperial family required one. But historians have long questioned whether the relationship between the emperor and his second empress ever possessed the warmth seen in earlier imperial marriages. The records show honor, they do not always show affection. The weight of being empress. To modern audiences, becoming empress sounds triumphant. In reality, it often meant living inside extraordinary pressure. The empress supervised palace women, oversaw rituals, participated in ancestral ceremonies, represented moral order within the imperial household. assisted in maintaining harmony among imperial consorts. Every movement carried symbolic meaning, even hairstyles carried meaning. This matters later. Inside the Qing court, hair was not simply fashion. Hair connected deeply to identity, ritual, and even mourning traditions. Certain acts involving hair could communicate grief, anger, protest, or ritual violation, depending on context. And the Qing court took ritual violation very seriously, especially during public imperial tours. By the 1760s, the Qianlong emperor had ruled for decades. He was admired, feared, cultured, ambitious, and increasingly conscious of his own historical image. He commissioned paintings celebrating imperial glory. He wrote poetry constantly, thousands of poems, which frankly sounds exhausting for everyone involved. The southern tours became part political theater, part inspection, part imperial performance. They projected stability across the empire while allowing the emperor to demonstrate authority in prosperous regions far from Beijing. Everything during these journeys followed strict protocol, which is why what happened in 1765 caused such shock. The incident, the records never provide a dramatic confession scene. No official document calmly explains the full argument. No surviving witness account tells us exactly what was said between emperor and empress. History leaves us fragments, and the fragments are unsettling. During the southern tour, the empress reportedly cut her hair. To modern audiences, this may sound minor. Inside the Qing court, it was anything but minor. Among the Manchu elite, cutting hair could carry associations with mourning rituals. Yet at the time, neither the emperor's mother nor the emperor himself had died. If the act was interpreted as mourning, it could appear deeply inappropriate, possibly even ominous. Some historians believe the act may have followed a personal conflict with the emperor. Others suspect emotional collapse, frustration, or protest. But the surviving evidence does not allow certainty. What we do know is this: the emperor reacted harshly, very harshly. The empress was removed from the imperial entourage and sent back to Beijing ahead of the emperor himself. That alone carried enormous humiliation. Imperial tours projected harmony and control. Public separation from the emperor signaled disaster inside court politics, and the punishment did not stop there. Erased while still alive. When the imperial procession returned to Beijing, the empress no longer occupied her former place within court life. Her privileges were stripped away. Her attendants were reduced. Court records show that honors associated with her position disappeared piece by piece. Yet one detail makes the story even stranger. The emperor never formally abolished her title as empress. Officially, she remained empress. Practically, she no longer lived like one. It created a strange political limbo. The Qing court could not entirely erase her position because imperial hierarchy depended heavily on ritual continuity. Yet the emperor also appeared unwilling to restore favor, so she existed in between, not fully empress, not fully removed, still alive, still inside the forbidden city, but politically isolated and perhaps psychologically isolated too. The palace itself must have become unbearable, every corridor filled with servants who understood exactly what had happened, without needing anyone to explain it aloud. Every ceremony now altered, every absence noticeable. Court life functioned through visibility. To be ignored inside such a system was its own form of punishment. The Forbidden City after favor ends. The Forbidden City contained thousands of people during the Qing dynasty, but emotionally it could become extraordinarily lonely, especially for women. Many entered the palace young and rarely left again. Their lives revolve around schedules, ritual, hierarchy, and imperial attention. If favor vanished, the world around them could become frighteningly quiet, not because nobody physically remained nearby, but because survival inside the palace depended on proximity to power. Servants adjusted loyalties carefully. Officials avoided danger carefully. Everyone watched the emperor carefully. And now the emperor had made his feelings clear. The former empress no longer stood safely beneath imperial protection. Later storytelling would romanticize these situations through ideas like the Cold Palace, a place where disgraced women supposedly disappeared into forgotten isolation. The reality was more complicated. The Qing records do not formally describe a single official Cold Palace in the dramatic way later fiction often portrays it. But emotional exile inside palace life absolutely existed. A woman could remain physically inside the palace while politically vanishing from relevance, and that may be even more psychologically brutal. Execution ends suffering quickly. Erasure unfolds slowly. The emperor's silence. One of the most haunting parts of this story is the emperor himself. Qianlong ruled for 60 years. His reign produced vast archives, poems, paintings, decrees, and ceremonial records. Yet on this matter, clarity disappears. The emperor never offered historians the explanation they desperately wanted. No surviving statement fully resolves the mystery, which leaves later generations searching through fragments, ritual clues, and political context. Was the incident personal, political, emotional? Did the emperor believe the empress had publicly humiliated him? Did court tensions already exist long before the southern tour? Had the marriage quietly deteriorated over years? We cannot confirm these things with certainty, and that uncertainty matters. History sometimes survives most clearly at the exact moment emotions become hardest to explain. The official records preserve consequences, not always feelings. Her death. In 1766, less than a year after the incident, the Empress died. She was 48 years old, and even in death, the signs of imperial punishment remained visible. Her funeral treatment did not match the full honors traditionally expected for an empress. The contrast shocked later observers. This had once been the highest-ranking woman in the empire, yet the ceremonial response surrounding her death appeared restrained and diminished. The emperor himself continued ruling for decades afterward. The Qing dynasty itself survived long beyond them both, but the memory of the disgraced empress lingered uneasily inside Qing history. Because her fall never received the satisfying explanation historians usually crave. There was no dramatic confession, no proven conspiracy, no final courtroom revelation, just fragments, silence, punishment, and disappearance from favor. Why this story still feels disturbing? Perhaps the reason this story still unsettles people today is because the punishment feels strangely modern. Not execution, not public torture, isolation, withdrawal, silent removal from visibility. A woman once central to imperial ritual suddenly becomes politically untouchable, and everyone around her adapts accordingly. Court life rewarded obedience, performance, emotional control, and careful survival, but it also depended heavily on imperial mood. One moment of rupture could alter everything, especially for women whose power existed largely through proximity to the throne. The palace glittered beautifully in public. Behind the walls, fear moved quietly through every relationship. And the Empress learned that even the highest position in the empire could become fragile almost overnight. The records tell us the Empress offended the Emperor during the Southern Tour of 1765. They tell us she lost favor. They tell us her honors disappeared piece by piece. They tell us she died less than a year later. But history never fully explains what happened between them. And perhaps that uncertainty is exactly why the story endured. Because sometimes the most haunting moments in royal history are not the ones fully revealed. They are the ones history itself seems reluctant to describe. Do you think the emperor's punishment reflected political necessity, personal anger, or something more emotionally complicated? Which seems more psychologically devastating to you, public execution or gradual erasure from power and visibility? Why do you think so many royal courts throughout history relied on silence and ambiguity rather than public explanation? I would genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this. And behind another palace wall, another dynasty was struggling with fear, control, and survival. That royal story is already waiting for you on screen now.